My name's Jill Wildman and I live and work in Hackney Wick. When I moved here, my mum came over, and when she did, she started telling me stories about all these different memories that she had of being round here. I didn't realise our family had extended over to Hackney Wick, and so I thought it might be a good idea to ask her some questions about this time. Hello, Mum.
Hello, Jill.
Tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm Evelyn Knowles, and I was born in Hackney Wick, and then moved to Bow. But my gran had lived here in Hackney Wick, and she'd raised a family of 6 children. And my grandfather, he worked when he had work, but he mostly had jobs like sweeping snow and helping people in their gardens and things. He didn't seem to have ever had a regular job.
And your gran, did she work, or was she busy with the children?
No, she didn't. She was raising the children, and I don't think she expected to work.
So as your grandmother's children started to grow up, what did they then do about work?
Well, my mother, I know best of all, is that she went to work in Clarnico's factory, which was the main source of income for the younger women. And I think it sort of set a way of her thinking that she always worked forever after that. That started her off, and she was always working in some way. She expected to work, I think.
So Clarnico was a major employer locally?
Yes.
And was it all women there?
Mostly women, yes. I expect the people in charge were probably men, but it was all women on the production line. They were all allowed to have some suites themselves. It was fairly comfortable work. She enjoyed it, and it had a social side of it because they were encouraged to learn other things. And she, in particular, did some acting while she was there. They were reading Shakespeare. She played Portia. It was a good part of her life.
Did they expect to work?
I think they had to work. I mean,
right.
my grandfather certainly was never in steady employment. If you're lucky enough to see the big picture, the big photograph that was taken of Clarnico's and their staff.
Yes, we're not sure if it's Tower Hamlets or Hackney Archives, but there's an amazing photo.
There is a really one which is full of these women all standing there, and they are all looking pretty happy.
Yeah.
It's a different situation to Brighton Maze.
Yeah, we were talking before about the match girls being so abused. This feels like it's very different by contrast.
Yeah, it is.
You were also talking about the Myers brothers and the wire factory. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, my father's cousins were Myers. They all worked in the zoo. They were wire workers, as they were called, because they made the cages for the zoo, and they had a business along that road that ran along which was near where the A12 is. They got chased, well, one of them got chased by a tiger or a lion or something at one time, so that was quite interesting.
And who worked there that you knew?
My Uncle Alf and my Uncle Jim and my Uncle Licker. Don't ask me if he had a proper name, but I only knew him as Uncle Licker.
And didn't they pass on some of that work to the younger generation?
Yes, of course he did. My cousin Alf, that was Uncle Alf's son. He worked in the zoo too.
In the same sort of role? More maintenance?
Yes, wire working. Alfie was about 4 years older than me, so he would have been born somewhere around 1928, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
When the war started, the families of workers who worked in the zoo were evacuated altogether.
Because the war interrupted a lot of people's work, didn't it?
Yes, yes. We'd moved to Bow. My dad took over this little shop premises, and it was all sorts of goods. And his dad, he used to sell eggs for my dad's shop, and he would have them on a wheelbarrow and go around the streets. Yes, then the war started, and I was sent off as an evacuee. After a while, my father was called up, but he was one of the last being called up because he was 40 by then, and my mother was left to run the shop by herself, which was perfectly all right because she's a very capable lady. But by the time she took over and there was rationing, you couldn't sell enough to make a living. My father died in Burma and she had to sell up because it was, it didn't work with goods she had to sell.
Tell me a bit about the area we're in now and how it was when you were a child. So we're on White Post Lane at the moment.
Yes. I was 3 when we actually moved away from here, but because of the family connections, because my grandma still lived here, I used to come here. Of course, at first I was brought here, but then when I was about 6, I suppose, they'd put me on the bus and tell the conductor to drop me off there, and my grandma would meet me. So my memory of it is as a pleasure, actually, to come down here to see my gran.